Because like how I was just talking to someone like, oh, I heard this. I was like, but I heard the same thing from other people. Like, but it's not true. This is bullshit.
Right.
All right, well, let's get into it. All right, so I already started the recording.
Awesome.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today, we discuss the very latest in mobile user acquisition with a specific focus on the two biggest non-self-attributing networks in market, Applovin and Unity. It's been a tale of two cities in terms of performance since Applovin attempted to merge with Unity back in August 2022. We'll talk about that. So we'll talk about just the general market as well as both of those two companies. But maybe we could start by just talking about the mobile user acquisition market of today. I'm hearing a few mixed things about whether it's easy or possible for certain companies to get positive ROAS, that payback windows are expanding, things like that. You guys actually know. So maybe we could start there. Where are we today, guys? Somebody jump on in.
I'm not sure. I'm always very positive about things, and I've been on this podcast so many times. And if you remember, Joe, we talked about this, I think last year or the year before, with the guys, with Matthew and Brian, about how Applovin is killing it and it's not going to go away. And it's like, oh, and now we are here, and it's still killing it. Although it's quite dangerous for the whole mobile gaming industry, because then, like a couple of years ago, it was basically Facebook, Google, and now it's Applovin, and a very big gap of performance, and then everybody else. So,
hey, Monte, let's jump into that. But like maybe the high level in terms of the mobile UA market today, can you talk about rumors or discussions or debates right now about whether it is more difficult to get positive ROAS, whether payback windows are expanding, things like that? What are you seeing?
I mean, the thing is expanding because the CPI is rising. I mean, which is the discussion we had million times before. It was like, oh my God, CPIs are increasing. Yeah, thank you very much. Like, welcome to the gaming industry.
Water is wet.
Exactly. Yeah. Every year, if all of if at the same discussion, CPIs are increasing, is tough. Paybacks are prolonging. Yes, they are. I mean, depends on your goals, then how much money you want to spend, where do you want to spend. So yeah, it is still profitable. I mean, it is still. You are still able to get the profitable paybacks or like to get profitable UA. It's different. Simple as that.
I totally agree. It depends what your goal is. I feel like a lot of companies' goals right now is not, like on the pub side, is not to make money. It's to have a very high revenue number. But then we all complain that the revenue multiple in gaming is really low. And it's like, well, yeah, you're not creating value, you're creating a revenue number. And so a lot of these companies that complain that you can't, I can't run a $100 million business at high profitability. Well, can you shit money at like a $40 million run rate? Well, that's the real size of your business. And there isn't an acceptance of that. There's like this idea that, well, we can see on Sensor Tower IAP revenue. Yeah. So that's how we judge each other. But like your revenue doesn't impress me. Your revenue doesn't impress me. Your yield does. Your profit does.
If you guys ever want to see something funny, just like pick any company in mobile that's been acquired over the last decade and look at their Sensor Tower revenue before and after the acquisition.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's like, it's just blatant financial engineering. You know, it's like, that's interesting, Josh, that you say that. Like, I feel like I saw a ton of that in the 2010s, like late 2010s, when there was like the fervor of M&A, and a lot of illogical actors like really driving up the costs. It's interesting. If it sounds like we're getting back to that period, I don't know. I have a limited scope. I'd see that, the games we operate on at Uptick, but I don't know that like the trend has been that CPMs have consistently gone up. CPIs have consistently gone up. Like, obviously we've talked about it to death, but like Scan iOS broke everything for a few years. I think an interesting thing to touch on today is like it's kind of gone back to normal basically everywhere except Google iOS. Like fingerprinting is just back on the menu everywhere. But we found like we kind of had a trough of like actually costs went down for like years and years on iOS at least, kind of moved over to Android, and now we're kind of getting back to the old world of I think the industry learned like Apple's not enforcing everything, so yeah, I don't know. The theme I hear is like if you suck at UA, your belief is well everyone knows that UA doesn't work anymore, and you just assume that it's the industry is broken and it's not maybe that you have a bad product or a bad user acquisition function at your business. But practically we've seen it hasn't gotten like any harder, any easier. The rules just continue to change as they always do. The network stack of like who's on top continues to change. But like if you have a good game, you can make UA work same as ever. But you can't just use the same tactics that you did 5 years ago. So yeah, it's yeah,
Exactly,
go ahead,
exactly.
Monte.
Look,
Yeah.
it's exactly. It's
Yeah.
just you have a game, you have an LTV, and that dictates the level of spend and the payback period. End of sentence. I mean, it's just 5 years ago it was Facebook, Google, something else. Now it's Applovin, TikTok, Google, different channels on different networks, and you have the rewarded UA space again. Well, not again, yeah, kind of again. So it's the same logic and structure. It's just different and changed the whole UA channel mix. But the overall logic around the UA and how much you can scale, when can you get the money back, same thing all over again.
Okay, so sounds like there's some mixed views. I thought the whole UA kind of, sort
Doom
of
and gloom again. Here we are.
I mean,
I thought the whole game around aggressive UA, we'll just call it aggressive UA models, was done after glue, or it was starting to come down. But yeah, maybe in some cases it's coming back.
yeah, it's very challenging. So like Wildcard we run UA very profitably. We as a business are profitable. And not all of our competitors is that true for. We're primarily ad monetized, and some of the businesses that we're bidding against in real time, like I can think of a couple off of my head, their names, and you've heard of these names. They're running ad monetized games on 18+ month break evens.
It's insane. It's insane.
So that's what I've been hearing. I've been hearing paybacks are expanding and things are getting more difficult. So maybe there's a few players in market who can basically piss in the pool for the rest of you guys.
Yeah, no, they are accepting. They're buying everything at very low yields, pushing up prices in some ways, and they're not actually creating a business. They're creating something that's sellable.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say this. I have seen some numbers from certain companies being characterized in misleading ways on their UA spend. So it might also be that kind of we're at this kind of cycle where a lot of companies are starting to run out of cash, a lot of game studios. And so I can see that there might be this incentive, hey, let's just push UA and then let's, kind of window dress some of our numbers. I don't know, but I've seen some of that.
What people don't really understand when you're looking at different external tools, it's just external tools. You don't really see the actual numbers. You don't have the context.
Yeah.
Like the context is everything. You don't have why are they scaling? Is it profitable? Is it just extending the payback period? Because what Josh said as well. And there are no ads in Sensor Tower as well, which can change the whole equation dramatically. Right. And people just don't know.
Right. Small detail.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so maybe we can get to the topic that I know a lot of folks are going to be very interested in, and it's a question, Josh, I've been bugging you about this for a while, which is the whole thing about Applovin versus Unity. And since the announcement of their merger way back, it has been very dramatic in terms of Applovin. I just hear from friends, oh, they're killing it. They're just getting all the business. They're destroying it. And somehow Unity is not doing so well. So maybe we could go ahead and address that, the elephant in the room, which is, what are they doing? Why is Applovin able to get so much business when you would think from a strategic perspective and having engine, Unity should, in theory, have an advantage? What's going on there?
Yeah, well, I mean, Unity has an execution problem right now, and I think that's been pretty well documented and consistent. There's just a lot of restructuring as they kind of continue to combine two businesses now. and kind of consistent reorganizations across Unity grow. But what's really interesting is, at least to me, is what Applovin's been able to do. I think it's really atypical because when you think about the industry in general, you think about it in terms of like DSPs, like the demand side, and SSPs, the supply side, and AdNet was always focused on the DSP because it's where the money is. Applovin did something very unusual, which is they've actually focused for a long time on the SSP, the mediation piece. And that's actually done something special where it's locked in their supply. And so they've been able to really dominate in an extremely novel way. And so the flow works something like this. If you want to buy inventory from a game that mediates on Max, there's no better way to do that than to run UA on Applovin.
Yeah, and just for our audience, Max is their ad mediation platform.
Their auction
Unity
house.
also has an ad mediation platform, but apparently, well, I'll let you go into the details of that.
The quality of them isn't as material as it used to be. So if you want to buy inventory from a game that mediates on Max, you really, it would be silly to not use Applovin App Discovery. And well, Max probably has an 80% market share, is a good guess today. I mean, Zynga's on Max now. So Applovin UA is a huge priority. 80% of impressions are probably mediated through Max, and everybody but Applovin gets charged a 5% fee to bid on Max. So even if their algorithms were equally good, you're going to get pretty material, like a 5% bid decrease is pretty material for UA. So running Applovin UA is a huge priority.
Do you think that's the main reason, Josh, or do you think there are other reasons?
I think there's that. I think there's first-party data. It's kind of a subtle thing, but
I don't think it's that subtle, man. Like, come on, seriously.
So it wasn't what we can prove. What we can kind of say, like what you can say very clearly is that, like, if you're mediating with Max and you want Unity or Iron Source or Moloco or something to buy on that ad revenue gets passed from Max to the clients to one of like 8 or 10 different MMPs. And then now that one revenue event becomes 8 or 10 different kinds of revenue events that get passed back with different parameters, different features for ML to train against. And Unity and Moloco, all these people have to figure out, well, how do we kind of combine these 8 different events to be the most usable? Whereas for Applovin, the data never even leaves their servers, and they get to decide exactly how it looks. And so they have one source. That's the first party data advantage. It's very, very fast, and it's consistent. And so there's no situation where it's like, well, 25% of our events have this parameter because it comes from Adjust, and 60% have this parameter because it comes from AppsFlyer. It's the exact same, which means their ability to make decisions and learn is just objectively higher. Plus, there's no lossiness of it going Max client MMP all the way back to them again. It's just all internal in Applovin. So you get that, and you get a 5% fee, even without funny business. Like the sad truth, sad truth, the impressive truth is, even with no funny business, those two things are a lot. Those two things are a lot.
Well, if you think about it, this is exactly what Google is doing with Firebase. I mean, it's the same logic. For Google campaigns, you use Firebase events because that data doesn't really leave Google, and it's when you compare MMP event tracking versus Firebase event tracking, the Firebase is like relatively like 20-30% uplift or like better performance because it's their data. I mean, it's exactly what Applovin does, but on steroids. Honestly.
Exactly. And the way that's felt for advertisers is much more dramatic, like Mate said, is because when you buy on Google, when it comes right down to it, you're mostly buying their own inventory. Whereas on Max, Applovin's advantage isn't just by you're outbidding other Applovin inventory or demands. You're actually taking demand away from Unity, from Moloco, from everything else. And so that delta is really dramatic. So you really want to run Applovin UA, but it doesn't stop there. If you're at least 25% ad monetized, you really want to use either ad ROAS or blended ROAS campaigns on Applovin's app discovery. So the UA that you want to run is like a ROAS optimized product. But the problem, you're only allowed to use ad ROAS or blended ROAS if you mediate through Max. And so now if you want to access that 80%, you have to make that 80% 81%. And now you're in and you can scale. And now they have 81%, and that's how they lock you in. Where now they're going to become, let's say, a third or maybe even 40% of your spend in some cases. Now you really can't leave Max because you lose Applovin UA. And it's not because you're locked in on the admon side. It's because as long as your competitors, the inventory you want to buy is on Max, you're locked into Max. And as long as everyone's locked into Max, they kind of own that ecosystem. And so it doesn't even matter anymore if level play or ad mob mediation is better, because it's not about you. It's not about admon. It's about UA.
Well, there's a snowball effect, right? So, I mean, to make a devil's advocate case for like Iron Source Unity, historically the same thing's been true, at least for Iron Source, that if you mediated with them, you could monetize with their ad revenue data and see better results. The old school like rule of thumb was like, if you do admon with Iron Source or level play is their admon system, then you're going to see better UA results on level play. If you do admon with max ads, you can see better results on Applovin. But to your point, Josh, at some point there's like a point of no return, right? Because if you start hitting like a critical mass of buyers or sellers on one or the other, there becomes more incentive to switch over. So you get the other side of that demand spectrum. If you're an app developer and 3/4 of the buyers have moved to Max or to buying on Applovin, you have every incentive to switch over to that stack. And likewise, if you are buying UA, like you have the incentive to move to like where there's more inventory available, where there's more integrations. So it does start to feel, especially with, I mean, I think we're gonna get to the fun part soon, which is like how Unity is dropping the ball in like every way imaginable. But like there hits a point of no return where like can anyone come up with a compelling incentive where like if you were shipping a new app today, why you wouldn't prioritize max ads? Like I don't think in Applovin, I don't think that was the case like even a year ago. Oh. But I feel like we might be at that point of no return now.
Yeah, that's very true. Also, the incentive. I mean, everybody has an incentive. If you go to Max well, it was the case before. So they wanted to move you to Max. You got pretty big cash incentive. But the thing is, even if you also there was like, maybe we can have an uplift like 10-15% on the ad monetization side. But as just said, like it's the same thing. It's like it's the UA part that makes the difference, because then like the ad ROAS campaigns and blended ROAS campaigns, thanks to the first party data and the scale of or like the inventory size is just dramatically better. So it's not like it's 30-40%. That's the best case scenario. If 30% or 40% of your UA channel mix is Applovin, that's perfect. Nowadays I see 70-80%, and that's very bad. Why? Because if Applovin campaigns die, then your company is dead. Like it's we are at that point, seriously. And I know, like,
it also means you've got no bargaining power. Means they can just take higher margin.
Right.
Which they should. If they're winning that much, they should take higher margin. But it's a challenging thing.
Yeah, and also like how they did how we ended up in this position with Applovin is they at some point they onboarded almost everybody on Max. I mean, now I think the latest data is like 180,000 apps on Max. Like that's insane. It's really like that's a big bit. That's a very big number. Very, very big number.
So should we roll back to whatever it was, August of 2022? You've got Applovin thinking, oh, we need to merge with Unity because we're in trouble here. And then all of a sudden they start to execute after, you know, the failed merger attempt, they start to pull away. And Warren, you mentioned there were some issues. I have been reading about some of those issues on Reddit, but maybe I should let you guys explain. So back then when they were, I think you could fairly characterize them as potentially even, or maybe Unity actually being strategically in a stronger position to today. How did they, from where they are today to back then, what did they do back then? How did they execute, or what happened such that they pulled ahead?
Yeah, I mean, Unity, this is one of the most historic, like, owned goals, I think, in all of ad tech. Like, Unity had every advantage. And it's not to say that it can't be saved, but, you know, they're basically, they have an SDK that's already in the majority of mobile games. I think there's just a huge gap in operational leadership between these two companies, and we've seen that in the thrash of Unity leadership. But Applovin has just been able to, like, leverage every possible advantage. Every time there was an opportunity, they've been able to maximize it. And conversely, Unity has squandered these massive opportunities. Like, the businesses within Unity have seemed so siloed, both between their games business and their ads business. And then I was personally super bullish when they acquired ironSource, because I was like, okay, awesome. Like, Unity has all these integrations, but they suck at sales. They suck at account management. ironSource is great at both of those things. And ironSource had a better algorithm, at least in my my experience in our data. We always have better performance from the ironSource algorithm.
I heard
Perfect match
I
made
heard
in
different
heaven.
things.
Okay, cool. Let's get into that. That'll be interesting. But I mean, anecdotally, in our portfolio, we saw better results from ironSource one way or another. But then this merger happened, and, like, nothing was capitalized on. It's like I don't, almost everyone seems like they're gone at ironSource now. There's complaints about the management that's still there. There's just, like, very basic operational stuff, like, this can sound like a humble brag, but I use it to make a point. Like, our team has spent like eight figures on ironSource inventory over the last few years. GDC just came about. Like, no one had, we had no contact from ironSource or Unity. Like, there's like no communication. Just basic operational functions are not happening for even, like, people that spend tons of money with them. Meanwhile, like, Applovin is, like, seizing every possible opportunity. In maybe some that are more or less ethical. I think we'll get into the short reports pretty soon. But Unity has had so many opportunities to leverage, like, these combined businesses. They had the operational expertise of ironSource. They had the integration of their app in, like, almost every mobile game, and they had the ability to do so much with this. And it just seems like there's no leadership pulling these pieces together. Like, what's the take from you guys?
I actually think they were in a horrible situation before the merger.
Okay.
And that's why they merged. I would go back, like, an incremental 6 months or so, maybe 6-7 months before then. You know, Max had, I'm going to kind of guesstimate numbers based off memory and the fact that there's no real data, but by feel, like Jan 1, 2022, Level Play is at maybe 25% market share. Max is at maybe 40% market share. And MoPub is at maybe 25% market share. And MoPub was that last white knight. It was a pure mediation product with no real network attached. It was owned by Twitter, and Twitter didn't want to besmirch their brand by doing dirty things, as they would call it. And they weren't willing to do what Level Play and Max were doing. And so companies like Wooga, I think Zynga at the time was on MoPub. And so there was this nice big clean thing, and it had this massive market share. Well, Applovin bought it. They shut down the tech, and what they did was they took the account managers at Twitter and trained them to sell Max. And then the old CEO of Max, Dan Sack, he was the BD guy at the time, and basically his entire job was, before MoPub shuts down, sign, it was like $100 million in deals was the number that got announced, of incentives to move all of those MoPub people over to Applovin. And so what happens when you go from 40 to 25 to 65 to 25?
Right.
Well, Unity and ironSource go, oh, fuck, we better merge. But that was like reactive. They'd already, like, this data play, this like owning mediation, had already gone, like, played out. Like, Dansak, like, some months later, just like left, like, my job is done. I've succeeded. That's kind of what he was there to do, was to like build that max user base, that client base. And
Yeah, so
go ahead.
sorry, I was about to say, so it sounds like the way that you've characterized things, Josh, there are network effects to this game. Unity did not quite realize that. Applovin always did,
Yes.
and they played to
Applovin-
win.
Yeah, and
Always.
Applovin,
I mean, always. And we can end,
Applovin
we can
really
end there.
rough and
Like, this
tumble.
is the best
Yeah.
characteristics of Applovin. That's it.
Well, and to be clear, like, Unity actually did see this, I'd say, JK. The
Okay.
problem was simple. They tried to build their own mediation product and they failed.
Yeah.
There was an execution problem.
I think there's one other big problem too during this era, which is out in the wash in hindsight. But for anyone buying Unity Ads UA at the time, their algorithm sucked. It was horrible. Like if you were an individual buyer at the time, Mate, I'm sure you saw the same thing. Josh, you probably saw the same thing. Like, you'd see these bad results compared to the other reward video networks. You talk to your Unity rep and they'd be like, "Oh, I don't know. It's working for everybody else. Like, I think it's just, try raising your bids." And now they've come out and said, "Yeah, our algorithm was totally broken. Like, we need to like rebuild it from scratch. And sorry everybody, yeah, it didn't really work well." It's like, that was very clear to us at the time. And obviously, like, over enough time, like, the data is going to rule. If people are buying from multiple rewarded video networks and your returns from Unity are way worse than, at the time ironSource was separate, but way worse than ironSource and Applovin, you're going to move your budget away to those. So they also had the self-own on that side of just like operating for so long with so much money pumping through their ad network with a broken algorithm that wasn't delivering good results for anyone.
Right. And on the execution issues, again, I don't have. I can't. I don't want to say definitively what those issues were, but there's so many rumors going around in the industry. So at least I can speak to some of the rumors.
Oh, please
which
share.
is, one, that Unity around that time had a very, and I don't want to get political, but a lot of people were saying like woke culture. So they were just not operating very efficiently, kind of age of excess type of things where there's a lot of politics, people can't make decisions. And so a lot of stuff just got paralyzed. And then there was like a very lackadaisical kind of complacent work ethic.
Isn't that like
there.
every big company?
No, because like look at Meta, right? Like Zuck has really turned around a huge company in terms of like the work culture and things like that. But not only that, but then I think what I've been reading about and what I've heard is that there was like kind of a cultural conflict between maybe the Finnish kind of culture and then like the Israeli culture from ironSource, and then all sorts of rumors and stuff there around conflicts between those two teams, whereas they should have been executing to play the game, which is there's network effects here. They need to go out and make sure that Applovin doesn't capture a huge part of the market. And they were, instead of fighting Applovin, they were fighting themselves. Is sort of what I've heard. But
you're kind of. I heard similar things. From one side, I heard, "Oh my God, they fired now all the like Israeli execs, and now it's not going to go anywhere." Then I met some of my friends that worked in Unity, and they said the other way is like, "Oh my God, finally that happened," because there were some tensions between the Israeli culture and the Finnish culture and the US teams as well. And then like, oh, well, we didn't, or the Unity, they didn't kind of integrate the ironSource algo because they said it's obsolete and doesn't really work well. And there's like, oh, well, let's try to rebuild the Unity algo because it wasn't working as well. And now it's going to take a lot of time. And now they're coming out with the Vector announcement. It's all sexy and shiny, but it's non-existent.
Yeah. Well, and so maybe we could touch upon that because I don't want to be too gloom and doom. And by the way, just for people in the audience to know, like my studio uses Unity. We really want Unity to do better. And I will say this last GDC was maybe the first time I've been hearing more positive than negative about Unity. So maybe we could just jump into some of that since you mentioned Vector.
But it's slightly different for you as a company and for us as a UA people, because what Warren said also, like the Unity reps, they just disappeared. Seriously disappeared. And the only thing you have is just this smb@unitygrow.com or whatever email, and then you get like all these random generic answers, and you will just not get any support. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So, and it's for you. It's
I will say I'm very lucky, very lucky to have good Unity account managements, where we have a dedicated account manager on the supply side and on the demand side. However, I will say
you have the one.
I believe
Congratulations.
One each.
Yeah, one
yes.
each. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. However, I will admit, like experientially, it's been challenging where there have been a lot of reorgs, and who owned what kept changing.
Yeah.
It was
and
going to be.
Just for,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just about to say, just for our audience to know, Applovin in particular has extremely strong sales culture. Like these are some of the most charismatic people you will meet in your life, right? And so they're great at it. And on the Unity side, I guess what you guys are saying is that they need to improve a little bit.
Yeah, it's mostly non-existent. And you compare like one of the best sales teams in the sector to a non-existent team, and like there's that advantage as well.
That's a very big difference, right?
I would say in North America, at least, I don't know, Warren, how you've experienced it, but there were some changes October-ish last year at Applovin, where there was a reduction where they lost some of their their most senior account managers. I would say for North America, Applovin account management has gotten those poor human beings. They are so busy right now. Like the quality has been a lot more touch and go. It feels like it's improving, and so I'm really impressed that they've done it. But it has been a challenge for them. So it's not been perfect in North America, but that may not be the case outside of that one.
One really wild thing that I've seen at Applovin over the last year that like made my jaw drop is like normally it's like, you know, to our point earlier, they have a very strong sales culture. Historically, it's been like anything they can sell you, anytime they can, you know, do new business with you, it's been a go. For the last year or so, they've basically been saying no to doing UA on a lot of the games we're launching. It's like because we work on games at different stages. Sometimes they're already in market, sometimes they're soft launch, and these days it's basically like, well, are you guys already spending 6 figures a month? Are you integrated in Max? Talk to us later. Talk to us like we don't really want to be a part of the launch yet, which I think.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, there's you can make a bull or bear case for this potentially. It's like if it could just be an optimization thing of like they see where their revenue is coming from and where they're putting their human capital to manage those accounts. And it's probably so disproportionate to those accounts that it's like, I mean, we all do this for our businesses in some capacity. It's like, how are we resourcing versus how are we driving revenue for our business? And I think all these things that we're discussing, it's very clear that there's a certain profile of games that drives the bulk of Applovin's revenue. And they have now quantified that to where it's like, hey, if they don't meet this criteria, why are we wasting time on them? That's not worth us like having human capital on it. Like we have so much more concentrated with this profile of customers.
Yeah, because
I think it's actually even more dramatic than. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say, like, if you're not big enough and you're not spending enough, you're not interesting enough for Applovin to assign a person, and because that person can be leveraged somewhere else, there where it actually makes more money for Applovin. And I think kind of like Steam size is an issue or a thing here. I've heard like some of like after the restructuring that you mentioned, Josh, like some of the like account there's like hundreds of accounts. Like how can you possibly manage that? Seriously, how can you possibly manage that?
Okay.
Yeah, some of those AMs are I don't want to call them like children, but like it's their first job in ad tech. I would say that going back to Warren's point quickly, I think that's always been true. Like, big customers, give you more revenue. Um, that was a really obvious thing I just said.
Yeah.
And so you want to care about the more, and so they're getting bigger, and so they can only focus on so many areas. I think
Yeah.
the one additional effect that's starting to come into play is that Applovin, as publishers like demand partners scale, they're able to increment up more and more margin. Because if you're going from like 45 to 50% share of voice, what do you want to do? Do you want to go from 50 to 52, or do you want to stay at 50 and take 10% more margin? Like at some point, it becomes a lot like IAP pricing in games. Like, what do you want? Higher conversion rate or higher, like price? It
Sweet
would be
spot.
really unintelligent to just say, no, we'll just keep trying to sell more and more of these $3 IAPs. And so now I believe, especially with their level of market share, that the highest spending customers also have meaningfully higher margin for them as well. And so now it's like even more disparate than it was in the past. So they're at higher scale, and forget revenue, like the profit potential is even larger than it was before.
Okay.
And I think they're going to keep pushing towards self-serve for that reason.
Right. So I think we've now laid the case for Applovin and kind of characterized how they were able to gain so much advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So Mate, you mentioned Vector. Again, just at GDC, I would say the first time I felt like there was a lot of positivity. The folks I talked to during GDC seemed to indicate that there would be a lot of positive improvements, both on the engine side and on the ad side. I did not hear any specific details. Can you guys talk a little bit about Vector? Why is there enthusiasm for this? I'm hearing some people say there's something real there. Other people are saying, oh, it's just vaporware, just to manage. Yeah, as a public company, they're trying to get investors something to be excited about. What is your view in terms of what may be coming? And obviously, right now, nothing has been specifically announced, just hinted at.
Well, I can say I was at their Upfest event in Barcelona last year, and we were kind of talking about different things and how they kind of going to change the algo and kind of changed how they score creatives. So it's in a different position, and how it kind of gonna help that you don't really see the spend coming into one creative winner, but actually proportionally spending across all the creatives, because that's been a big of problem on Unity especially. So that's what I've heard. But I mean, it's April. I'm not sure like when is it gonna go live, but it's time, guys. Like yesterday was already too late.
I'm so jaded to this stuff. Like I started doing UA work in mobile, I'd say most seriously in maybe like 2014, 2015. And like it is the most played out tale in all of the UA industry of like, I mean, when has there not been a network that's like, hey guys, we are introducing our brand new ML AI algorithm, and it's going to make all of your UA perform better? Like that's been literally the pitch of every ad network in mobile throughout history at all times. And so like I'll believe it when I see it in the data. But I mean, this is just the last time they said they had a new and improved algorithm, it turned out to be shit. Like at the end of the day, and so it's like if they deliver on this, awesome. We'll see it in the numbers, and we'll get their business. We'll give them more business then. But I'm not gonna. Based on the PR of saying like, hey guys, we have don't worry, we have an AI thing that's gonna like improve our business in every way. Like, cool, let's see it, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that they have chosen to announce and brand this new AI as Vector, but then not create like a brand identity within that. And so right now, I feel like behind the scenes, Applovin and then our own feelings are creating the brand identity for Vector, which is like a huge challenge for them. So I think they need to start talking more
Yeah.
if they have something differentiating, or like that brand name is going to become like a set thing sooner rather than later, and someone else is going to define it, not them.
Well, there's no call to action
Yeah.
right now. It's like, okay, cool. You guys are shipping a new AI algorithm
When?
sometime in
Yeah,
the future.
when?
Like,
I wanna
yeah,
I wanna
am
run
I
it.
am I gonna spend more money now,
Yeah.
like in anticipation of that? No.
Yeah, it's like I've been asking people like, have you seen it already? Like what are like I'm looking at
It's like Bigfoot.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my Unity campaigns and they're like very small scale and it's like okay-ish performance. But this has been the case for me forever. I'm not sure like what I'm doing wrong. Maybe I'm not doing anything wrong, and this is just the case of Unity.
You're not doing
Yeah,
anything wrong.
exactly.
No, you're doing everything right, Mate.
So like that's like the problem is like it's just small scale and like decent, kind of semi decent. And asking others like, have you seen any uplift or anything improvement? Like, no. Like I was like, but they're talking about it for such. I mean, what like a month or so, month and a half, maybe. Like it's in beta, whatever. Zero people told me like, oh my god, this is such a great thing. It's been oh my god, like I vector release changed the whole equation on the Unity side. No.
Well, let's talk about the same thing for Applovin. So, like when I'm sure you guys get hit up about this all the time. Like every week, like 20 people hit me up and want to do like a consulting call on like Applovin or Iron Source, right? So there was like a couple of months where everyone's hitting me up and they're like, we want to talk about this new Axon algorithm. Like, what is the Axon algorithm like changing for you? And like, how is this like redefining UA? And I was like, what? There was new algorithm? Like, so just honest question. Like, did you guys see any sort of meaningful change, or was this really just more of a
it was
branding
quite
exercise
huge.
when the new algorithm rolled out?
For Axon
You saw a
2,
pretty meaningful change.
it was insane. Yeah, on the ad-mon side, like just looking like being able to see both sides is very helpful.
Yeah.
So when Axon 2 rolled out, the first thing we saw was Applovin literally collapse.
Yeah. It crashed. Like it was just
They had to it was insane. And it was hilarious. If I remember it correctly, they rolled it out like 2 or 3 weeks before MAU.
Yeah.
Crashed everyone's ad monetization.
And UA as well.
Crashed all the ad ROAS. Yeah. And then told their account managers nothing.
Yeah.
And so those poor souls had everyone's quarters like going to shit. And they're just going to answers and there are no answers. And like the senior leadership wasn't there to answer those questions. So it was like, I remember it was a very dramatic time. I will not forget it. But yeah, Axon 2 is like fundamentally different. What was special about Axon 2 isn't that it was like a special bidder. It's that it had a different like feature set.
Yeah.
I don't mean feature set like a product feature. I mean like an ML feature.
Yeah, different KPIs to take into consideration, basically.
Yes. Axon 2 was essentially Axon 1, modernized, cool, but built to directly take features from Max. Like directly pipe in revenue information from Max. And when you get that first party data, one revenue thing, like revenue, that's not just one feature. When you are able to get super granular, because it's first party and it's super locked down, you can look at things like, well, there's like a revenue feature, like what was the impression? There's a CPM feature. There's a CPM delta feature. There's a time between ad feature. There's all these different features you can start to make because your data is locked in. And so now everybody else is trying to cobble together these third-party events into something they can get one feature out of, maybe two. Applovin can now start to get really, really granular. And so now you can see they've gone from running day 7 ROAS campaigns to you can set day 28 targets.
Even for other ROAS campaigns. Even for other ROAS campaigns. Like that's insane. And
it is. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Their ability to use that data pipe. It's not that they're magically like, oh, you set targets differently now, or that like it's magically pulling new users. It's just targeting existing users much better because its data set is just way better. It's not that they like out ML. This is the data. Like good data is really That's like step one when you do ML.
Yeah.
That is the first good explanation I've heard of what the changes are. So thank you, Josh.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey guys, I wanted to talk about so you guys are saying that Applovin significantly advantages larger players and things like that. I'd like to talk about what small and mid-sized studios should do. But before that, I just wanted to like close the loop on industry implications. If Applovin continues to execute, if Unity does not become a viable alternative, or if someone doesn't come in and become a viable alternative, and Applovin is able to expand and increase lock-in, could you guys
That's going to be the doom and gloom situation. That's going to be the doom and gloom.
Yeah. So explain
Well, like
that to us.
imagine Apple and Google didn't have a 30% fee. Imagine the fee was variable and secret, and you didn't get to know what it was, and you couldn't see what the transaction size was in the game. All you saw was the revenue coming out.
Right.
And you had nothing to compare it to.
Yes. How would you interpret that on the IAP side, JK?
Yeah, I think that would not be a good situation. It
The
kind of reminds
ability
me
for
of
Apple, the ability for iOS and Android, like for Apple and Google to take margin and like take the
they
profit.
dictate your margin.
Exactly. Yeah,
I mean, to your point, Josh, I think this is it's like one of the dirty secrets about the UA industry. And I'm going to intentionally not name names here, so don't get sued by anyone. But like we have definitely seen, I've seen in my career, and plenty of friends and colleagues, same thing. You're doing the same thing with the same ad network, same creatives, same conversion rates, and like performance goes down a lot, and you can basically say like, hey, cut it out, like I know you turned the margin knob up, turn it back down. And they're like, okay, and turn it back down, and like performance goes back to where it is, and vice versa. Like if you're really trying to get more budget from you can be like, well, you want to turn your margin knob down, and they can do it, and performance will go up. And so it's like it is totally opaque. Like, and when the competition goes to zero, if it becomes Applovin alone owning the sector, they can do whatever they want with that. And what are you going to do? Other than if you can buy through the sands at that point.
And for the record, I don't believe the account managers at Applovin can do that. What you're saying anymore? I think that's all automated and algorithmic at this point and at scale. I think I learned about the mushroom strategy on 2.5 Gamers.
Yes.
It is like
that sounds inappropriate.
How do you treat ad reps? You feed them shit and keep them in the dark.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, and Applovin treats their reps in very much the same way. They don't have as much information as you would like for them to have, and that's like been a thing that's played out many times.
I was just about to say that Felix mentioned this always and all the time. Well, the problem with this doom and gloom situation is that you don't have any other option at that point, and also the fact that like right now I'm running Applovin even for like small to mid-sized games, and Applovin is like significantly better performing thanks to Max and all these things that we just discussed. And Facebook doesn't it's like nowhere near the equation, because let's say for AdWords campaigns, it's just not there. It's just not there yet. They don't have the proper algo for the AdWords campaigns, even though it should be, well, according to their words, better than the rest of the market, which is not. Google maybe a little bit, but then like what else do we have? Moloco? But still, nowhere near the scale.
I think DSPs are like the worst business in the world to be in right now.
Well, from my perspective, I see kind of 3 classes of ad networks. You have like differentiated SDK networks, whether that's Meta, like you own the network, you own the inventory, or you indirectly own the inventory with Max or Level Play. So you have mediation. Then there's a combined DSP SSP. And then
let me clarify. I think that it's the DSPs that don't own their own inventory that are like really not long for this world, because your only value prop is like, well, we have a better ML algorithm, but it's like there's all these advantages that Applovin has now over those businesses. Yeah.
So just to get back to small or medium-sized studio, Monte, it sounds like you're saying today, the current market right now, Applovin has significant advantages. You would recommend them to, what would your recommendation be with Applovin
wait, there's no option. I mean, that's not
There's
it's
no
not an
option.
option. If you have, or if you start a game right now, or you build a game,
Okay.
your strategy nowadays is you build a game which is built around Applovin algorithm. So you make sure you send enough data back to Applovin, so you can then capitalize on the UA, and like that's it. Then you have
Mate, you're forgetting a very important thing though, man. Unity's got a new thing coming
yeah.
sometime, and it's going to have AI in it.
Very true.
Okay, but
No, but still, it's like this is
but
not
guys,
an
so-
option. Honestly, like right now, you have ad revenue based game, or even like 30, 40, 50% ads in the game, and well, 50 and more. No option. You have to have max. If you don't have max, you're losing. I mean, that's like simple as that.
Okay. Right. So Mate, you're saying if you're, for monetization and UA, especially if you have a game that has a lot of ads in it, you have to go to the Applovin ecosystem. Is there any case where it would make sense not to use Applovin?
I will devil's advocate here and maybe just
Okay.
say the cases where we don't see Applovin as a key part or like leader in the UA portfolio, because Monte is absolutely right. If you are ad rev driven, you should probably be monetizing on today in 2025, probably be monetizing on Max and doing a lot of UA on Applovin. For IAP driven games, we don't see Applovin is even in the top couple usually. So that's usually driven first and foremost by the sands these days. And then below that, we would see at best parity between Applovin and Iron Source. Still for the last year overall, we saw a bit of an edge in Iron Source, but I think it's almost like a coin flip at that point. So that's the thing I would call out is like if you're ad rev driven, Applovin's probably ruling for you. If you're IP driven, I think the sands still have better targeting algorithms and more data available.
Yeah, I agree. I get the question is like, where do you go? To start out, I think that what I'm hearing on the IAP side is like exactly what Warren said. It's very like your mileage may vary, but Applovin owns that ecosystem. If you want the flexibility, the strategic flexibility of being able to go down that path, you want to do that. And so going down that path gives you flexibility right now, where if it turns out your game isn't 100% IAP and you're a small business and you're scaling, it turns out that's the way it is. Well, then it turns out you could have gone either way. But if it turns out you're 25% or more ad revenue, then you only ever had one decision. And so one path means you can win in any way you want. The other path means you had to go with Applovin. And so there's only one path right now that's safe in all scenarios for new game developers. Like from the ad network perspective, I think that's also very illuminating, where it's like, how do you beat Applovin? And I think that when we talk about it from the industry point of view, we think about it as like there's this one linear like tug of war between those two companies. But I actually really do think that it's very diverse. There's like different genres, but there's also, I think, the way the dichotomy that's kind of forming is purchase versus revenue focused campaigns. Even in the blended world, it's like a purchase and revenue bias. I think that Applovin sees everything, so they're always going to dominate on IAA. If a network is going to compete with Applovin, it'll be because Applovin can't target what it can't see, and it can't see all the purchases.
Well,
that's the only in that's left.
Yeah, but look, so there have been like so many different actual cases. This is what like Toon Blast, and it's like very old game. Now, at the peak revenue in March 2025, the biggest channel is Applovin. We have all these different games now coming like Color Blockchain, Magic Sword, and all of these different like kind of hybrid casual, but even like going towards casual games. Like they have so many IIPs. They build the games around like very high level of like a high number of events sent back to the either Applovin or anywhere else. And this is what's the kind of like the future, or like the how the whole UA kind of landscape is now been working. Like you just like, even if it's true that IAA is better in certain way because of Max, but also IIP games, heavy IIP games, it's just there's no this is it. And this is not only case. You have Township, you have all these old games that are just killing it these days, because it's combination of like the early creative kind of approach and also the Applovin in the mix, and the like number of events they can send back to all the channels. So there you go.
Yeah, I agree. There's like real urgency here where I don't actually think there's that much revenue growth left on the ad monetization, ad campaign side for Applovin, because they already have it
Yeah,
all.
exactly.
And so, yeah, where does the growth come from? To Mate's point, the growth's going to come from purchase. And the reason that Applovin can't see all right now is because they're not getting every purchase post back, because they're not causing every purchase install. Now, if they keep gaining share, what's going to happen? And so there's your urgency for the other ad networks for execution speed.
Right.
Because what happened with Max and IAA campaigns, as they gain Max market share, it has to dominate.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen as they gain IAP market share?
Exactly the same thing. And that
Yeah. So let's talk about that. What do you guys, does anyone have a chance at becoming a viable alternative? How would you guys advise Unity? Is it basically game over in your minds, or what should Unity do next? What should anyone else do next to serve as a potential viable industry alternative?
I feel like the chapter on rewarded video is almost closed, right? Like, I don't see anyone being able to come in and completely upend. It's kind of this point of no return that we've talked about on this episode. I do think, just like our industry has continued to evolve, like it's right now we can't imagine what hasn't been created yet as far as like new forms of advertising. So I don't think there's any realistic chance for Unity to have such good tactical, overhaul and leadership, and their AI algorithm to be so good that it like undoes this story, that it puts the toothpaste back in the tube. I do think that there's going to be, just like our industry has always been, it's a game of arbitrage. So as Applovin consolidates market share in this segment and turns its own margin tighter and tighter, I do think there's going to be more opportunities. I mean, one thing that we've seen a ton of this last year is like progressive rewarded progressive rewarded networks is kind of like an emergent type of UA that's kind of carving its own lane. And I'm sure they're kind of eating it on margin as they're trying to get established. But just the same way that UA has always existed, like there's going to be emergent competitors offering different things that are going to be willing to take less margin and hit the users in a different way. But I think for rewarded video, I think the story is close to done. I don't see how it could really change in a meaningful way at this point. What do you guys think?
Well, I think Unity needs to unfuck all these decisions they made, and it's going to take them a very long time to be even able to come closer to Applovin, which that's a long way to go. It's either you need a lot of investment and money to and resources to make it happen, or it's just a matter of time. And even like the incentives now, it's like for Unity, it doesn't really go in their favor, unfortunately.
I've given them my feedback. I mean, I think Vector is going to be what it is, and hopefully it becomes more public soon what that is. But the way you put that toothpaste back in the bottle, like let's talk about that scenario. Like, what does Unity have to do? They have to launch Vector. Vector has to win on purchase campaigns. It has to very effectively target purchasers and become a viable UA platform for everybody, but especially it needs to be able to dominate and do very well there, because it's not reasonable to say that they can outbid Applovin when Applovin has all the data, plus they can charge a 5% fee to Unity for bidding. And so Unity has to outperform the data by 5%. It's not realistic. So they have to win on purchase campaigns. They have to win on purchase retargeting. And then they have to be able to use that and leverage that to be able to sell to us, hey, you should move to us for mediation because look, our IAA is good enough that it can be competitive. And, hey, our stack is very dominant towards purchase campaigns. So your retention is going to be a lot better if you monetize here. And then it can start to pull over mediation clients, and then it can start to dominate on IAA. That's a very long chain of ifs.
Yeah.
Like that is in my mind the
I
chain they
would
have to
say
follow.
it sounds like a fairy tale, man.
It's a long chain.
Yeah.
It's
I see a slightly different path.
Okay.
I see a slightly different path here, which is like, and this is even more of a moonshot because it would take even a higher level of coordination between Unity's functions, which they've shown like wholly incapable of doing. But their big advantage that they still have that Applovin has not replicated is that they are the default game dev engine for mobile. Yep. And the same way that we talked about on this podcast, how Applovin is starting to get the lion's share of admon data. The moonshot for Unity would be, and this would be probably a violation of trust of some level, is basically if they're just like, yeah, well, it's like, hey guys, guess what? Like Unity dev building on Unity is actually going to be free, but we're going to use your data any way we friggin' want to, and it's going to mean that we have like this level of user behavior targeting that is, unparalleled. That would be, in theory, how Unity could still win this.
Yeah,
I don't see that happening, but that would be, I mean, that would be the thing that would make me eat my words for making fun of, their new algorithm that they're announcing.
Warren,
if that's what they actually did.
You don't see that happening because of executional issues. Okay.
Yeah.
But I actually think that was probably one of the reasons why I think the Applovin guys wanted to merge with Unity because they thought they would use that strategy against them, but they never did.
No, I think like right now I understand like why the vector is actually targeting the ROAS in like IIP ROAS campaigns instead of IAA because there's no competition for like this. There's no chance they can actually do what the Applovin does. So, but like, even if they do well on the vector, it needs to scale. And that was always a big problem on Unity, always. And how can you scale on such a small market share? It's quite tough. So then, like those ifs, it's going to be very challenging. And I wish it happens because that can help the whole industry to just kind of move away from 80% budget spent on Applovin. And we need to kind of like wish Unity pulls this off for the sake of the gaming or the UA.
Yep, definitely. Because how do you make all game devs make more money? The ad networks take less margin.
Exactly.
Why would ad networks take less margin? Because there's more competition.
Yeah. Same thing as ad monetization, right? You have more.
Yeah, exactly.
It's exactly the model. Yeah.
Yeah.
But is there any other? So if Unity can't fix its executional and cultural operational issues, is there anyone else who can come in here, or are we really dependent on Unity as our last chance for like a viable, healthy market ecosystem here?
Oh, come on.
I mean, I guess Warren and Mate, what do you think about Integral and Moloco?
Well, Integral and Moloco are kind of climbing up on the UA charts for me, at least, and I'm seeing Integral quite a lot on all the casual games. The B review on the podcast, like it's Integral is it's Applovin and then Integral. It's insane.
I would agree with that. Yeah, so Integral is probably the most improved player. It's one that I didn't have a lot of faith in its like first year or two, but like just after seeing time and time again reliable performance, like it's become very relevant in our stack. Moloco, I would say, with all love, it's sort of like best of the worst. Like
Is that so really? Okay, interesting.
I was talking about this. Yeah, I've talked about this earlier, but like I see so little value in the future of DSPs that are not heavily integrated directly into the apps. That their main product is the bidding algorithm, and I'm sure this varies by player. I know other folks that see great results with Moloco, and we have selectively in our portfolio. So I don't want to within the DSP sector. I think they're one of the best. So let me kind of clarify.
which is not very
I think
big achievement, right? So,
yeah, DSPs have historically well, let me zoom out here. So like, what are DSPs doing? They are arbitraging other people's inventory at the end of the day. And what we usually see when you look one level deeper at what DSPs are buying is there's two things. They are rebuying rewarded video inventory and adding their margin on top. So like they're adding another 20% or whatever that network is. So they're kind of like putting a layer between you and buying directly from that rewarded video network, which is actually good inventory. But why are you paying that? Like it's in my assessment, it's not really worth that margin on that inventory. Cool, just go buy directly from that source. The other thing it buys is a bunch of like shitty web inventory that just gets optimized out over time. So like that's been big picture, like what we've seen over the years with DSPs. It's either the bad web inventory that is harder to get direct access to, but you just optimize out, or it's the good rewarded video inventory, which you can just buy directly from the source. So especially as these titans like Applovin get more powerful, their algorithms get better. If your product is saying, hey, you're going to pay us an extra 20% because we have an ML AI algorithm we're going to put in the middle and get you better results, I think that's a really shitty business to be in for the medium term here.
Josh, please, can you share something? Because you were smiling for like the last 2 minutes. Like, you know something we don't. So please go ahead.
Yeah, please. And maybe I'm wrong.
Okay,
I love being wrong when I can learn something.
Don't fucking play poker with Mate. Okay, gotcha. I get it. Or just Josh shouldn't play poker. I know. I agree with the thesis. Everything that Warren said. I think what makes Moloco special, though, is that they have rolled out an SDK.
Yeah, they have that SDK.
And it is gaining traction and it's working. And I think it's unlocking a lot of product work on their end that is really exciting. And so my expectation is that they'll be one of the faster growers when we look back into the year. And I think a lot more kinds of clients can be successful there long term. The fact that they have an SDK has unlocked so much more stuff there. I think they could outgrow Integral by end of year, to be honest. Just like looking from the ad-mon side and like looking at the progress they're making, the fact that their SDK is like so incremental, which is surprising because usually when you launch a new SDK, what it does is you integrate it and then it just causes ANRs and it causes crashes. So usually it's like a very skeptical thing, but it works. So they're executing.
That's a great call out, Josh, and I'm glad you called that out because it's like all of these DSPs claim that they have like their own SDK
but Moloco really does,
like first party inventory. Yeah, and it's for most it's such a tiny percentage of the overall inventory, but that's if that's changing with the Moloco, that would probably explain why on the UA side we're starting to see them more and more outperform the other DSPs.
But the thing is, look, 5 years ago, so 5 years ago, like we didn't even like know Moloco, and suddenly out of nowhere, like, hey, lift off, goodbye, we are here now. And it's happened suddenly, and now they're moving really fast on the SDK side, on the ad-monetization side, and I think they're going to be a very big player in this.
Yeah, it is still early days. They are still DSP flavored.
Yeah.
Like,
fair.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. So maybe last question then. Let's kind of think if you guys could predict the future, or I'm asking you guys to predict the future. Let's say 2 years out, and I'm sure we'll have many more discussions from now till then, but let's say it's 2 years from now. Who's winning? What is Applovin's market share? And do you think anyone at that point 2 years from now has done anything meaningful to combat the dramatic kind of strategic and market power of
I will
Applovin?
go first and say Meta is gonna go and grow and improve back again where they were before, because they are paying attention what's happening. They're also trying to do all they can to kind of reclaim the position number one. It's not going to be easy, obviously, like this year, maybe not next year, I would say so. And also Google is also watching from the behind and trying to do some stuff on the monetization side to kind of level the playing field. So we are still keep forgetting about Facebook and Meta and Google, but they are watching, and I think it's going to be a huge improvement on their end, because again, they also know if they don't do anything, they will lose quite a lot, and they have to.
Yeah, we move like so slow in mobile. So like I would love to think that like we're meeting here like in a couple of years and just talking about totally different players and totally different tactics. But my God, I mean, we talked about Scan for friggin' like finally we're talking about some stuff other than Scan.
Yeah.
Like I think we're going to still be talking about the same players. I do agree with Mate. Like the the large players that are going to be able to actually do very meaningfully. I hate to say AI again, but like I do think that we'll see like the bigger moves with AI from Meta, from Google. A medium term thing I would look out for is like, so Google, I said early on, like Google iOS is kind of the last vestige that doesn't have fingerprinting in some form back on the menu. The moment that becomes back on the menu, that's going to become a huge emergent channel for ad spend on iOS again, because Google Ads continues to crush it on Android, but it's just basically been out of most people's stack on iOS for years at this point. So I think that's going to be the short term change, and then longer term, yeah, I think the next era of algorithms from Meta and Google will be a force to be reckoned with, and then TikTok will copy whatever that is.
I think the probabilistic kind of adoption on iOS happening for real this time is, I think, going to be a huge trend this year. Meta and Google have had probabilistic kind of sorta for many years, but it's not really been usable. It's not been in your MMP and you can believe it and you can see ROAS in a real way. I think that's going to happen this year. It's going to unlock supply for us, but it will also, in the in-app ad space, it'll start to create some pressure for Applovin, where right now they're able to use probabilistic and really push last click so hard to take so much of that attribution. But like in a year or two, looking at in-app, like what happens to Applovin, I think the only two scenarios I can see in my head is one is like either like fire and ice, like Applovin continues to dominate ad-monetized, but there's another player that can legitimately compete for purchase, and that creates the next war, that next fight. The other option is like way more sad, and it's. I remember
Don't
I
go
used to
there.
hear stories about how Intel. Yeah, I remember I used to hear stories about how Intel did pricing when they were dominant, and essentially they would just increase the price until AMD took a certain market share, and that was their anti-monopoly strategy, where they just increase their margins until AMD had a certain share, so it looks like they're not a monopoly. That is probably, if I were the Applovin CEO, what I would do. So that's the other scenario where their margins just go up and up and up until we're still buying on other channels, but they're taking most of the margin out of the industry.
Right. And there was a time when Windows dominated against Macs, and they were like on
And it
death's
felt
door.
impossible. Yeah.
And it felt impossible. So, in the tech industry, there have been dramatic comebacks before. So I think there is an opportunity for a lot of folks. That was going to be my last question, but I forgot one last bonus question. Okay, so Applovin is putting in a bid to acquire TikTok. What happens if they acquire TikTok? And maybe you guys could describe what some of the advantages that Applovin would have if they were to acquire TikTok.
That's the topic for another podcast, JK. Seriously.
Okay.
Yeah. In my
It's tough.
opinion, it just wouldn't be that it wouldn't be like a bolt-on anyway. It wouldn't be that synergistic. It's like those are such massive, like, what happens when Unity and Iron Source merge? Did they just magically become one thing? Like, no, that's like not practical. Right. It would be like a separate business that they would be buying, and over many years maybe they could integrate, but we don't really know. It would be certainly really interesting, and if you were trying to distract from bad news, it would be a really good thing to be talking about a lot. But yeah, I'm not sure if it would be like this massive value unlock moment.
Yeah, it's an entirely different playing field if that happens. It's an entirely different industry if that happens, and so I do agree. It's like a whole separate podcast.
Okay. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and insights. I think it was an interesting discussion. I do think this is a very important topic, strategic for the entire industry. So it's definitely something I think more executives and people, in the industry should be aware of. So for our audience, thanks for hanging on this long, and we will catch you later.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
guys.
much. Cheers.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you all.